everybody. My name is Emma Wharton, and I'm the Executive Director at Grand Canyon Youth. And before we get started, I want to take a moment and in service of our mission and values, we want to acknowledge that we are located on and visit the ancestral homelands of the Dene, Havasu, Pai, Hopi, Wallapai, Apache, Western Yavapai, Ute, and Paiute peoples, past and present. And we recognize with gratitude the people who have stewarded these lands since time immemorial and the vibrant Native communities who make their home here today. Also really want to acknowledge this beautiful place that we live, Flagstaff, Arizona. Got to participate in some community events today and just amazed and so appreciative and grateful for this community and for you all for joining us tonight. So thank you for coming. The theme of tonight's event is curiosity, which also happens to be one of our organizational values. And we hope that you will join us all tonight in the spirit of curiosity. We have brought together storytellers who have graciously volunteered their time to share stories with us on this theme. And I'm always really curious about the way that different storytellers embody this theme. And I think it's like our community and the people and youth that we serve. I think you're going to hear a lot of different kinds of stories tonight. And out of respect for our storytellers, please turn off your phones and try to refrain from talking or getting up unless needed. We do have some exits around, and if you need to get up, feel free, but you know, it takes a lot of chutzpah to get up here and tell a story. And so why do we tell stories? You know, I think if you have been with Grand Canyon Youth for a few years, you know that our event has evolved over the years. We used to have movies and that kind of thing, and you know, we really love Flagstaff Film Festival. They do a great job, so we don't want to be in competition with that great community organization. So we came to stories because one of the things that we love about getting youth out on river trips is that you get that technology is stripped away, and you get to be out in nature and have authentic conversations with each other. And you're floating down the river and you get to tell and hear stories. And I love to hear how stories change from the beginning of the trip to the end of the trip, right? Where people are kind of just getting to know each other a little bit, or, oh, we'll talk about pop culture because it's easy. And then by the end of the trip, you're hearing other stories of things that are part of their lives, or funny jokes, or you know, things that help to bring the community together. And so I think stories are something that help make a river trip a river trip. And they're also the thing that endures after the trip, right? There is a saying, what happens on the river stays on the river. And I think that that is a saying in part because it's so hard to translate what that one experience. I've been on a lot of river trips, and no two river trips are the same, right? They're very different. And so with that, I think that's where I think that what stays on the river, or what happens on the river stays on the river, because it's just unique to that experience, and you'll never have that experience again. So that's why we're telling stories tonight. I also want to take a moment and celebrate and pause. It is Grand Canyon Youth's 25th anniversary this year. Which is really hard to believe. I have been here for 2 of those decades and have seen Grand Canyon Youth continue to evolve and change. And wow, I'm so proud. I'm so proud and ecstatic of where we've been, where we are, and where we're going. If you have a moment in the small gallery out and more in the lobby, we have a visual representation. We had a grad student, Kevin Geegan, who's here and traveled from Salt Lake to be here, and he compiled 15 years of our survey data and put it together tonight with just a portion of that survey data. So you can see some of the responses of the 12,000 youth that we have served over our 10 years. So please look at that. Tonight is also a fundraiser. And So we hope that you, find it in your hearts to make some donations to Grand Canyon Youth. And we have met our goal that we set. And it's really great. I know. Yeah, let's pause for gratitude for that. Yay! So we met the goal that we set, which is exciting and wonderful. But I'm going to contextualize it for you. As somebody who does a little bit of fundraising, it's really hard to set a goal. How much should it be? We don't want to set it too high or too low. We don't know. We'll see. So it's so exciting. So thank you all who've donated via the auction and things like that. But in 2023 alone, we distributed over $110,000 in direct financial aid. And that is over and above the offset. So we drained a little bit of our coffers in 2023, and so we really need to replenish that. So just because we've met our goal doesn't mean we don't need to continue to fundraise. So we hope that you will share your generosity with us this evening. Okay, we do have a few ways that you can support us tonight. If you have not yet checked out the online auction and you came for the stories, please check out the online auction. There are some incredible auction items in there. And if you need tech support, do not ask me. Nope, we have Haley, who is an alumna and work study, who is in the lobby. She can help you get any questions or technology that you need set up in that way. And we have, again, a text to give, or you can make a donation on our website. All right, and we met our goal in part because of our generous and amazing sponsors, and they are Arizona Raft Adventures, Flagstaff Surgical Associates, National Bank of Arizona, NARBA Institute, Wildland Trekking Company, Four Seasons Guides, RNA Auto, Import Auto, Vishnu River Supply. So many great donors and sponsors. All right, yay, sponsors! And you're going to hear a little bit more about Grand Canyon Youth kind of scattered throughout the evening, but you came to hear stories. So let's get us started with some stories. So our first storyteller is Marika Taney, and Marika holds a Master of Science degree in Environmental Education and Forestry from the Teton Science School and Northern Arizona University, and has worked full-time at NAU since 2008 as a teaching professor in the Geography, Planning, and Recreation Department, specializing in outdoor education and leadership. Since 1999, she has worked in the summer months as a river guide and trip leader along the Colorado River in Grand Canyon for canyon explorations. She has a deep passion for Grand Canyon as a teacher and inspirational life force. Marika enjoys watching students find their passion, mountain biking, playing around with art stuff, fiddling on the guitar, messing about in boats, and just being outside. She is also serving and has served for a number of years now on the Grand Canyon Youth Board of Directors. Welcome, Marika.
Woo! All right. Let's get this started, huh? So I want to start out with a question. With a raise of hands, who in the audience has ever had an encounter with a rattlesnake? Wow, holy cow. All right, that's a lot of you have had encounters with rattlesnakes, so a bit more of an esoteric question. What do rattlesnakes and warm beverages have in common? Anybody have any idea? They what? They sting. Warm beverages and rattlesnakes sting. So you're in luck, because I'm here to tell you a story just about that, what rattlesnakes and warm beverages have in common. So the summer of 2022 in Grand Canyon was a curious one in many ways. Long-term drought and climate change leading to the aridification of the West. So we're in a long-term drought right now, and the West is getting drier and drier as we speak. Lake Powell dropped to historic lows in 2022, which in turn caused bony river levels in the canyon and warm water throughout the entire canyon below Glen Canyon Dam. So we saw ice in coolers melting faster than we ever had in 70-degree water, because the boats are actually sitting in the water, and so the ice is not able to stay well in coolers at that temperature. And we navigate rapids that a lot of boatmen had never seen water that low. It was kind of crazy. And perhaps one of the most concerning things was watching native critters behave in strange and curious ways. So it's a little bit about what my story is about. So July in Grand Canyon in 2022 was hot. Real hot. Like, kind of crazy hot. But at least it was muggy with monsoon moisture hanging heavy and still in the stifling heat. So you had heat and moisture and all kinds of things. It was July 16th, and the canyon exploration trip I was leading was camped at Hell's Kitchen, which is mile 144 and a half, just below Kanab Creek on the right. A pretty apt name for a hot, hot July camp in Grand Canyon in July. So everyone on the trip was trying to keep their body temperatures at normal human levels by just sitting in the water, which was muddy at that point in time as well. And they were kind of mumbling heat-induced chants as they were sitting in the water, while the crew was up in camp in the heat cooking, how does this sound to you all? A warm, spicy, hearty meal of pozole and cornbread. Everyone was really excited about this meal, right? As you can tell, when we went to clean up that dinner that night, there was a lot of pozole left in the pot. But finally, with the evening chores done, folks slowly migrated to their hot, sandy beds, clutching wet sarongs and sheets and moving like that, basically, up to their beds. A lot of folks continued to migrate down to the water to take a last dip before they could finally find some rest in the July heat. And as the crew, we wandered to our boats to start setting up our beds. And the crew's evening unfolded with a lot of dunking in the river behind the boats, as we normally do to try to get comfortable, and bantering back and forth to one another, chatting. My friend Kelly McGrath, who is not here tonight, but great individual, we were parked right next to each other, and my boat was in the middle of the 6-boat fleet. It was 9:45 p.m. at a time when we would have normally been asleep on the trip, trying to fruitfully combat some sleep deprivation in these hot July temps. No one was sleeping very well. But on this night, Kel and I decided to stay up, and we kind of kept getting in and out of the river and talking. And our beds were set up on the back hatches of our boats. And we were sitting in our river-drenched underwear on the back of our boat, just chatting in the dark. And the conversation finally started to dwindle. And I laid my head back on my pillow and started to close my eyes. And Kelly turned on her light for a moment. And then everything changed. She said, so my nickname is Meeps or Reeks. And she said, Meeps, get up, there's a rattlesnake on your boat. And I thought she was joking, but there was something in her voice that gave me pause. So I grabbed my headlamp and I jumped on my cooler. And sure as shoot, and you could probably add a more appropriate expletive in that, but sure as shoot, in the beam of my headlamp, I saw the largest Grand Canyon pink rattlesnake I had ever seen in 25 years guiding in Grand Canyon, the largest one I had ever seen crawling up my drag bag. And if you don't know what a drag bag is, it's a bag that we typically hang off sometimes, mostly the back of the boats to keep beverages cool in the water. But there it was. And so its rattle was in the water, half of its body was on the bag, the other half of its body was on the tube of my boat and making its way towards my sleeping pad, and it was about 3 inches from my sleeping pad. So, which was kind of crazy. So Kelly also jumped on my cooler and watched for a moment, stunned. Another guide on the trip, Huppy, or Lindsay Hupp, some of you may know Lindsay Hupp, was on one boat to the left. And so hearing the commotion, she came over, and the 3 of us stood there for a minute in our drenched, soaking underwear, reveling at the curiousness of the situation and wondering what to do. So Hupp finally broke the stun by grabbing a paddle from the paddle boat, and then Kelly grabbed a ducky paddle, and I just stood there mouth agape thinking about snuggling with the snake and not helping the situation at all. So Hupp and Kelly gently started corralling the snake with the paddles to keep it from going into my bed or into the bilge of my boat, which would have been really sad situation. And then we also didn't want to push it back into the water in fear that it might not survive. So we were kind of stuck with this boat, like this rattlesnake perched on the tube of my boat and wondering what to do about it. So lots of commotion and headlamps flashing alerted another member of the crew, Jed, who made his way over to see what was occurring. And so more light, more commotion ensued as groggy ideas were thrown around, and Kelly decided that we needed a bucket. Good thought. Good job, Kelly. And so she handed the paddle over to me, which I reluctantly took because I'm still standing there, mouth agape, thinking about sleeping with a rattlesnake. And I took it, and Hupp and I finally got the rattlesnake corralled with one paddle underneath its head and the other paddle underneath its massive body. And we were holding it up. And Kelly expeditiously, thank God, got a bucket quickly and brought it over to where we were standing. And meanwhile, while we're holding the snake, we're barefoot straddling two boats precariously in the dark in our underwear. So Kelly finally got the bucket, held it underneath where Huppy and I were precariously straddling the boats, naked in our underwear, and we finally put the snake back in the bucket. Jed, meanwhile, the other boatman that had come over, had a lid handy, which was great, and a strap, and so we put the lid on the bucket and put the strap around the whole apparatus, and Kelly and Jed walked the snake upstream and let it go peacefully in the dark upstream from my mile 144 and a half, just below Kanab Creek. And hopefully the snake found its way back to peacefulness and not in the water and not on my boat and not in my bed. So snake wrangling on boats at mile 144 and a half, all done seamlessly in our underwear. But there's more to the story. So top 10 lessons I learned from this encounter. Low, warm water leads to curious happenings on the river. Rattlesnakes can be in the river for a while and be fine. My snake friend had to swim for a minute to get to the middle of a 6-boat fleet. So drag bags that are supposed to keep your beverages warm, are now snake bags, and they're worthless. In July, they don't really cool your drinks. Snakes use them as ladders, and I will likely never again keep them hanging off my boat at night. Fair warning to all of you. When taking a Georgie dip, so we're going to hear a little bit more about Georgie White in a minute, to cool down at night, be careful because you may have a snake encounter in the water. After almost sleeping with a snake on your boat, you probably won't get much rest for the rest of the trip. Laughing is always helps, and having a wonderful friend is a blessing. Number 7, this is my favorite one. Always stay up to chat with your friends. Even when you're tired and hot, good will probably come from it in one way or another. Grand Canyon pinks are tremendously beautiful snakes, just not in your bed. And underwear is a Superwoman outfit. All this said, my curiosity strikes, and I ponder that much of the snake's intuition is not new. Snakes are no strangers to crossing water. In fact, I've actually witnessed one launch itself into the East Fork of the Gila River on its own accord. Maybe their apprehension has only been recently from the abnormally cold water that's flowing through Grand Canyon from Glen Canyon Dam. Turn back the clock a bit to pre-dam times in warmer water. I bet snakes in the water might have been a more common occurrence that many of us can imagine. Perhaps this is simply a return to the past norms of inner canyon travel. Enough said. Thank you.
Oh, do you want to give me your microphone?
Walking away with the microphone.
That's okay. I could listen to you all night. That was awesome. One more round of applause for Marika. I haven't seen a rattlesnake swim in the water, but I have seen a king snake in the water. Yeah. All right. Next story. Our next storyteller is Jim David. And Jim David is a bit of a local legend here in Flagstaff. And in 1975, Jim was an enthusiastic biology teacher and saw the potential of a muddy, trash-filled wash next to Flagstaff Middle School. And if you haven't lived here for a long time, there is no more Flagstaff Middle School, but now it is a Flagstaff Junior Academy and a couple other things. And set out to restore this small portion of the Rio de Flag as an outdoor classroom for his students. So Francis Short Pond, thank you. He also is a founding member of Willow Bend Environmental Education Center and has been involved in a meaningful way in the Flagstaff community for decades. What you may not know is Jim is also a river runner and was part of the river community in kind of more of the earlier days of commercial river running. And he's going to share a story related to this theme. Jim.
Thank you. Oh, golly. I'm going to treat this like my living room. How's that? I went to high school in Kanab, Utah between 1954 and 1958. And then I moved to Kanab because there was no Page, and they flew back and forth. So I am in a way involved in Glen Canyon Dam. One of my dad's favorite sayings when he was working on the dam was, "What we're building here is a Model T Ford." And I think he meant it. My dad passed away on the dam in he was 52 years old. He was in the service and smoked too much, but that's where he passed away. And I left Kanab in 1958, went to the University of Utah, and then finally wound up here. I met Dick McCallum in Kanab when he was working with Georgie White. And I was at the time working with another river trip, cleaning toilets and painting boats. I was only about 14 years old. But we decided that we were going to go to California and get involved in Georgie's program. So we went to California and got involved in her program. I was with Dick when he did Grand Canyon expeditions. I worked on the river for about 20 years and then got involved in some other things. But when she asked me to talk this evening, Dick and I had long discussions about that boat that Georgie took down the river, because a lot of people said, "Oh, that great big rig, 3 pontoons tied together," and then she had 3 tin men. I did the tin men thing. Dick did the big boat thing. We were worried because Georgie and Whitey, her husband, really knew what they were doing. And tonight, I want to explain one of the things that she did well, and that's how she handled her food. Now, you got to remember, in 1958, there was no satellites, there were no radios, there were no helicopters. When you did a 22-day trip, you were responsible for the 25 or 30 people in every way there was to be responsible, because you couldn't get them off the river. She was quite bright in that she found the firemen in Los Angeles to help her. Well, we know our firemen in Flagstaff. Where are they good? They're good with burns. They're good with injuries. When things happen that cause tragic situations, they know how to handle it. So she used those firemen and trained those firemen to run the river. One of the things that I was really interested in, and Dick and I, was how she handled her food. So I'm an older guy. I'm 84 years old, so I need some help here. Carol, if you want to give me a hand. Let's take this guy right here. Do you all know what this is? It's not just a Dutch oven, it's a 16er. And a 16er will hold about 5 of these. This is a number 10 can. And in order to fix this one, this happened to be bush beans. These cans you can, that's the lid. On the trip, she needed 3 of these plus 2 12s and a 6. And what they did was they built fires. We built, anybody could build a fire in 1957, 58. We did see rattlesnakes, but the most important thing that gave us the most trouble were ants. And part of the reason that we had ants is we didn't realize that when we gave people food, if they didn't eat down near the river, they left the food on the beach. And it only took about 3 or 4 nights, or if we got to a place, only about 450 people had run the river when we ran the river in 1958. So that was our biggest problem. We did see snakes, but we were a whole lot more worried about the ants. Well, the way this worked was, you got to remember this. I'm going to set this right here so you can see it.
He's a teacher, he has to model things.
Yeah, this is the model. On that boat, she used 3 big rafts, and one of those rafts had 4 sets of these, and if you'd like to think about this, this is a 4x8 piece of plywood. Oh, there we go, a 4x piece of plywood, and inside each of these, if you'll hold this for me, Carol, each of these was a number 10 can, like this guy here, and so because she could not lose food if she turned a boat over, she tied these together and had this. The only way you could get a number 10 can out was to reach in and pull it out through this little area here. And so inside here were about 55 or 60 number 10 cans. Well, she tried to put the meat in one side and the greens in one side and the tomato sauce in the other side. When we got ready to do the dinner, we got out the cans. Hopefully we got a can out that was meat, a can out that was greens, and a can out, or 4 or 5 cans that were, and we put them in these cans, and that was how the reason that she did this is if her boat turned over, there was nobody to help her. The boat was a single boat, and there was no way to get a helicopter down, so we really needed to save. Had that boat gotten upside down or got in trouble, these held together, and she didn't lose the food for the 26 people. Now, it was really interesting because she had one of the firemen that worked for about 5 or 6 years, and he stacked these. So we'd build a fire and put stuff underneath, then we'd put the lid on. And stack another one on top of it. And get coals and put here and then stack. So this was the main dish. The next one up was probably biscuits or that sort of thing. The next one up was maybe cherry cobbler. And so you had to be very, very careful. And the way that they could tell whether the heat was enough is you either got a little bit of water and you put water on the top to see how hard it was, or you spit on it. And when you spit on it, you could tell how the bubbles flowed. And so that's how they controlled the heat. And a lot of times the people didn't get to eat till quite late because we got in quite late. This was a really super important part. Do you all know what this is? This is a can of Carnation evaporated milk. They made evaporated milk during the Civil War. Now, in order to make these work, this is how we opened the cans down on the river. We didn't have enough time to use a can opener, so we used knives. And the knife that we used, this is not the knife we used. The knife we used is right here. Because in 1956, a knife like this, you had to use both hands to open it. Now, the people that were on the river didn't want to do that, so the knives that we used looked like this. This is a knife I had in 1956. When you took it out, now remember, you were on the boat. If you took it out, you never took it out unless you put your finger through the knife hole here. Because if you ever dropped your knife and you were on the boat, that was the end of the knife. The interesting thing is the way that she figured this out, and I think Whitey did it for it, is you had to do something. You could work this way. When you needed the knife again, all you had to do is this. And there's no way you could lose your knife. Now, were there three things that you never loaned? You never loaned out your knife, and you never loaned out your beer in the evening, and you made sure that you stayed in the kitchen because people wanted to borrow food and everybody got hungry. I know that when Dick and I talked, she was very, very careful on the river. Even though, what did we do with our cans? Do you have any idea what we did with our cans in 1958? We filled them with sand, took them to the middle of the river, and dumped them in the river. And they probably wound up rusty like this. What did we do with our waste, human waste? We put it in cans. At first we buried it, and that was wrong. And she realized about the second year. I was on the river with her about the 6th year she was on the river. We took the material to the middle of the river and we dumped it in the river as well because we were there 18 days and there was no way that we could keep it. And we used as many springs as we could. And the water was warm. I think you mentioned that the water was quite warm. The year that I ran, it was running about 41,000 second feet. So that big boat did very, very well at most of the rapids. The way that she made those boats, I looked on page 78 in one of the books that in my library, and it showed one of her rigs where one of the pontoons was up. Those pontoons could not flip on themselves because they used hemp rope and tied around the whole bottom. And that way it couldn't tip up on itself. And the 310s were pretty much the same way. And to my knowledge, I don't think she ever lost a boat upside down. There are lots and lots of boats that did wind up upside down, but she was more worried about taking care of those 26 passengers than she was doing exciting stuff with a smaller boat. And I know a lot of the boatmen in the late 50s, early 60s, even to the 70s, complained about that big boat being on the river. But trust me, had she not done that, I'm afraid that we would have lost people. And to my knowledge, I don't think she ever lost a person on the river. I can't remember. We did have people die on the boat. We had a person die when we were down on the Colorado, way down below. But I don't think we lost anybody. We have 1 minute left, okay? The boatman that ran the food program was a poet. Part of the problem. He wrote a poem, and the poem is it's river language. Can we afford a couple of river language words tonight? We have some young people here. He would stand about the third night, and this is how he opened his cans with a knife like my knife, and everybody would get around, and he would say, "Here I stand in my kitchen so grand, with a can of carnation milk in my hand. No tits to pull, no manure to pitch, just poke a hole in this son of a bitch." Thank you.
Got all the things? Thank you, Jim. I would like to hear some more stories. I think you have a few to tell, for sure. So, again, I think like one of the only constants is change, and just thinking about, you both talked about warm water and the river changing, and the way that we do things on the river changes, the people who have gone down the river changes, like, so interesting. Our next story, and then we're going to take an intermission, but our next story is by Shannon Sartain. And, Shannon is I want to start by saying Shannon made my month earlier when, we're at the end of the season and kind of having the end of season blues a little bit, missing the youth in the office and that kind of thing. And Shannon shared this story, and I was like, oh, right, that's why we do this. Thank you. So Shannon Sartain is a hydrologist at the U.S. Geological Survey, where she has worked since 2021. And she is part of a team researching changes in river sediment and sandbars on the Colorado River and Grand Canyon. In July 2023, she had the privilege to join her first Grand Canyon youth trip as a community scientist. Alongside USGS geographer Erica Byerly, she taught youth about debris flow. She is excited to share the story of this trip and the magic of her time with youth in the canyon at this year's River Tales. Shannon.
Thank you, Emma. Thanks, everyone. So I had been hearing about the magic of these GCY partners and science trips ever since I joined the USGS. And their USGS permitted trips run with Grand Canyon Youth, where youth get to come along and not just experience the canyon, but do research with scientists. And the best sell I got on these trips was probably from my colleague Anya, who said she'd rather go on a GCY trip than a private trip with her friends. And I've been fortunate to go on a handful of science trips since I started, all studying sediment resources in the canyon. So servicing gauges, measuring sandbars, and mapping the bed of the river. But when I started, and I love these trips. I work with really awesome people, and we collect awesome data that is used to help manage the Colorado River and how Glen Canyon Dam is operated. But when I heard about the GCY trips, I was intrigued in like a totally different way. Like, you get to go on the canyon with youth and not crusty government scientists. And you get to actually hike in the places that we boat past on science trips, and teach youth not only about the canyon, but involve them in your research. I was sold. And as soon as I got an email requesting scientists, I knew I wanted to join. So I'd be joining Erica Byerly, who's a geographer at the USGS and had recently got funding to study debris flows and how they might pose risks to campers and campsites in the canyon. So we'd be taking youth to popular campsites, and with the help of historical photos and reports and our observational skills and some basic survey equipment, look for evidence of debris flows, past and present, and potential future ones, and how they might impact these resources in the canyon. And also on the science crew were Craig Ellsworth of Western Area Power Administration and Larry Stevens of Grand Canyon fame, but in this case, the Spring Stewardship Institute. And Larry and Craig would be sampling benthic macroinvertebrates from spring-fed tributaries, or in other words, look for cool bugs in cool places. So I was super excited for the trip. Rig Day finally comes in July. But as many of you know, it's so hectic, as every rig day is. We're at the USGS warehouse. Cans are being slung in every direction. Logistics managers from not one, but two organizations are telling us about their expectations for the trip and that we're entering something called a heat dome. And Erica and I are lugging around this side box full of more books about debris flows than anyone could ever read on a river trip. And then we go to the GCY office, and I meet like 20 teenagers. And then we're getting in the vans to go to the ferry, and I'm counted in the youth head count. So I'm excited, but I'm just overwhelmed by all of this. But as soon as we leave from the ferry the next morning and start to float, my anxiety really starts to go away as I start to feel this GCY magic that I have been hearing about. The guides, Erica, Delaney, Justin, Garrison, Joe, and Lauren were all so welcoming to me. They shared with me their intentions for GCY trips. For many of them, how they went from being youth on this exact trip to being guides. And Delaney even let me sleep on her boat by the end of the trip. And the youth are just a blast to be around too. You know, they're full of stories and jokes and ways to make fun of every adult on the trip, like immediately. And teaching science is more fun than it feels like work. So we would get to spots. We were at debris fans. Larry and Craig were at tributaries, so that's a lot of the stops we would make for fun or camp anyway. And usually we'd have one or two like short but formal lectures on geology or ecology or history, and then some data collection. And the youth certainly learned a lot doing these activities, but the theme of tonight's event is curiosity. So I want to emphasize that a lot of the learning they did, even for science, happened usually on the lunch or the boat ride or hike that followed these activities. And they would see a new rock at river level or like a cool new plant and just ask question after question, so many that I couldn't answer them, and we'd go find Larry and then he could answer them. And in addition to being curious, they were also so fun to be around. And like some of my favorite moments were just watching them do their thing. And as Emma said, like without technology. And it really was amazing. Like we'd get to camp, unload the boats, and within minutes they've made up some game or teaching each other some game. And then the adults are like, "Can you teach us how to play? Like we want to play." Or our food pack, for some reason, included about 1 jar of salsa per person per day. So the youth just started finding any excuse to drink jars of salsa, including, after we all ran lava safely and it was safe to swim, swimming to Erica's boat to get salsa shots, because you can't have tequila on a GCY trip. And so in addition to being fun and curious, they're also very thoughtful in a way that like just blew me away. So the night before we visited the Little Colorado River, we brought along the booklet Lifeways of the LCR, which is made by the Grand Canyon Trust. And that includes a lot of stories from, like present day stories from Native people on their connection, like present and historical, to the LCR. And we read some of those excerpts aloud, and like this kind of prompted just an open-ended discussion about what it means to visit a place like the LCR as a non-Native group. And I really think the youth handled this discussion with much more maturity and humility than many adults could, I think. And so there's one more story that anyone who is on this trip will tell you, which is the Poncho's Kitchen story. So it's Deer Creek Day. I'd never been to Deer Creek, so I was really excited. We hike up to the patio. It's very chill. Everyone's reading, working on their block prints, or exploring the upreaches of the creek. And we see clouds start to form, which this was a very hot trip, like over 115 degrees almost every day. So at first it was nice knowing that we'd have clouds later on. But then it starts thundering, and the thunder's like booming off the walls of the canyon. And we have just been studying debris flows and flash floods for 10 days. So we're like, we're getting out of here. So hike back down. It's like cloudy. Boat down, and we're looking for camp, and Poncho's Kitchen is open. And for those of you who don't know, it has like overhanging to Pete's ledges, so you can like go underneath this like kind of ceiling. And so we're unloading the boats, and the storm is doing that thing where like ridge by ridge, we just can't see anymore as it's getting closer to us. And finally it starts raining at camp, and we're hanging out like dry under the ledges, drinking seltzer. We're like, this is so awesome. We've got Poncho's Kitchen in the rain. But then Justin, our trip leader, runs out into the rain and just starts like kind of hollering and getting soaking wet. And then all the kids run out after him, and then all the adults, and everyone's just like dancing and like doing cartwheels and having this moment that I can just best describe as like being alive in nature together. And then all the youth start washing each other's hair. GCY not, I don't know. And this is just like such a memorable moment, and so memorable that at the ending ceremony of the trip, where everyone's going around saying their favorite moment, like half the kids must have mentioned it, and everyone's crying, I'm crying, like just sharing about this moment and all the other meaningful ones on this trip. And Justin, our trip leader, his like kind of last message to the youth, he says like, be kind to yourself in the rim world. Like, it's gonna feel weird when you get off the trip after you had this time together. And Grand Canyon is always a safe space that you can return to. Like, you can visit again, but you can also return to this trip in your minds. And since this trip, I have returned to these moments many times, and I really miss the curiosity and joy and wonder. So thank you for letting me share.
Thank you so much, Shannon. I know the worst part is like I just get all verklempt hearing the stories. And I think like, what a better way to combine science and like service to the canyon and learning, but also just that euphoric joy. Like, we don't have those moments as much as we should. So thanks so much for, I feel like you transported us there. Thank you. I was thinking about dancing in the rain on the river myself. We are gonna take a 20-minute intermission and then come back. We have 3 more stories to share with you tonight, and you do not want to miss them. It's also a great time to check on your auction items and then visit with our incredible community. And the exhibit is also quite powerful if you've not had a chance to look at it. It really grounds us in perspectives and the privilege that we have to be here this evening. So enjoy your intermission. Remember, it's a fundraiser. Thank you all for being here. And when you hear people ushering you back in here, please come back in. Thanks so much. Okay, we are going to get started. Here pretty soon, find your seat. And there are some more seats, so if you want a comfy place to sit down, feel free to come on in. Okay, we might get a few more folks coming in. See, it's so great because I have to do that so that we can have the sound. And all of the educators are like, clap back. See that? I like that. I like that. Different things. All right. Welcome back, everybody. Time is flying. Time flies when you're having fun. So we have 3 more stories. Again, I've got my soundtrack going on. Sweet. Okay, thanks. We've got 3 more stories this evening, but before we get started, we've got a short movie and a quick GCY update. So as folks are coming in, we are going to get that going. So enjoy this movie that was made by an alumna, Molly Baker. GCY offers educational outdoor expeditions that connect young people to the transformative power of the rivers and canyons of the Southwest. What is wonderful is that the core mission has really stayed the same. Time on the river, away from the daily grind or the daily stresses of life for adolescents, and I would also argue adults, is transformative and helps to bring clarity and lessons that are relevant for day-to-day life. And so that has stayed the same throughout the 20 years, as well as youth having an opportunity to earn their experience and to be part of as many aspects of the trip that they can, whether that's setting up camp or cooking a meal or getting the boats downstream, so that they really feel that they're part of the experience, especially at that kind of transformative or important time of adolescence. How does an experience that could be a once-in-a-lifetime experience, how does that open up other possibilities for them to think, and for all of us to think about how do we want to be in the world? These days, I'm really thinking a lot about our vision, and that vision is to help people to become connected to the place themselves and their communities in a meaningful way, and to be stewards for each of those things in their own way. we do makes a difference in the short term, it makes a difference in the medium term, and I definitely believe it will make a difference in the long term. And so that investment and commitment and trust in the mission and what we are doing here at GCY is so important. We are gardeners for the future citizens of the world in a way that is really unique and special to these rivers and canyons of the Southwest that cannot be replicated anywhere else on the planet. So fun watching yourself on a video. So fun. Ooh. Anyway, but great video, great impact, great mission. We're gonna do a quick Green Canyon Youth update. You got some updates there, but there are a couple fun things I wanna be able to talk to you about. Let's start with this year. In 2023, we ran 62 expeditions. Woo! Served 731 youth and connected youth to 3,150 days outside. That is amazing. What were some of the highlights from the year? I will tell you. We have been running the Verde, the little Tapco Wrap section of the Verde down near Clarkdale for a few years now. And we connected every fifth grader from 4 Flagstaff schools, Kinsey, Marshall, Killip, and Puente de Hojo, got to go on the Verde, except when we had to do a little change because of the higher water earlier this spring. They all got to go in the water, though. 5 all-indigenous expeditions, both in the different sections that we run. And we ran and brought back one of my favorite expeditions that we run, which is the Grand Inspiration trip, which is art-focused, and that was pretty incredible. And then, as I mentioned before, we distributed over $110,000 this year in direct financial aid. So if you don't know what that means, yay, I know, that's so exciting. That means at GCY, we want cost to not be a barrier to participation. So we offset at least half of the cost of the trips. And then in addition to that, that is the financial aid. So that's a lot of financial aid, which is pretty incredible. The other thing that I am very excited about is we've been working for a few years on a project with the psychology department at Northern Arizona University and the NARBA Institute to better understand the impact that these expeditions are having for youth and really trying to see what we can do to help make that impact even greater. Because been doing this for a minute, so I know that impacts are happening, but how do you measure that and how do you communicate that? We also wanted to do it in a way that was connected to our values and really highlighted and put youth at the focus. And so we did it, this was our second year, highlighting a program called GCY Speaks. And so the youth on the expeditions who did these GCY Speaks programs, they got to choose from photography, creative writing, and visual art. And they used art as a way of reflecting on their experience while they were in the experience, but then after the trip, they came together via Zoom and made meaning from their experience. And I have a few slides about that today. And so what we're trying to do is, instead of only doing extractive evaluation, raise your hand if you've gotten a survey after you've done something. Yeah, that's like the common way. We're trying to do something a little bit different that also helps to increase the meaning. And so we had the youth, like I said, taking photographs and doing art. Scarlett Morales, this is art from her trip. She's here tonight. We also had tons of photographs. I think, oh gosh, Kevin is here who helped count the photographs. I think we had something like over 5,000 photographs or something like that. Like 12,000, thank you, Kevin. I knew I would get the number wrong. 12,000 photographs. Because if you think about it, right, you're in this digital world, and taking a picture is one of the ways that you make meaning. And the photos are everything from beautiful sunsets to water fights to, I think there were like tadpole pictures. And then what was really amazing as well is that the youth took the 3 mediums that we gave them, and then they wrote songs and made music. They decorated life jackets, and they made a movie. Like, they just took it and ran with it. It was really incredible. And then one more piece of artwork, because this participant is here too. This is Day Barnes, who is a freshman at NAU and has done a few expeditions with us. Are you in the audience? Yay! Incredible, incredible artist. So yeah, lots of cool things happen at Grand Canyon Youth. Looking downstream, where are we going? Our custom expeditions are open, so we have been busy since August working to put together our 2024 expedition season. And individual expeditions are going to be opening in the beginning of December. And we will be adding an additional full-length it will be a full-length Grand Canyon trip with an exchange, but increasing our access that way. So that's really exciting. And then we are continuing to increase our program quality and logistical improvements. Before we get to stories, river trips are quite an undertaking. They are equipment, logistics, staff heavy, but I truly believe that they are worth the time and effort that it takes to put them on. And so thank you so much for helping us to raise funds for these important programs. So fundraising, I got the update. To the moment, I don't even know if it's to the moment actually, we have raised, at the last time I checked my phone, $37,426. So that is amazing. So please, thank you for all of your generosity, and please continue to donate. Without further ado, I usually talk fast and loud, and tonight is no exception. We are going to have a pair of storytellers, and one of our storytellers has traveled from Michigan to be here to tell the story tonight, and the other person is from here in Flagstaff, or lives here in Flagstaff, and I've been so excited to hear this story. So I'm going to give you a little of their background. Sharon Hester has been a longtime river guide and began guiding at Arizona Raft Adventures, AZRA, in 1982. Her first trip in the canyon was in 1975 as a participant on an ARDA trip. Like for many others, that trip was a life-changing event. She started her guiding career on California's Sierra Nevada rivers in 1978. In the winters between 1979 and 1983, she did an exploratory rivers and guided in Costa Rica. After acquiring her radiologic technologist license, she worked seasonally at Yavapai Regional Medical Center, and she later worked full-time at Flagstaff Medical Center doing X-ray, CT, and MRI scans, and guiding part-time in the canyon on her vacation breaks. And for the last 12 years, she has worked full-time as the AZRA office staff, with her latest responsibility being charter group reservations and their social media guru. She works full-time from her home office with her 5 dogs, cats as supervisors, and the shameless plug, consider following AZRA's social media. It's fun and interesting. She's doing her job, even tonight. Good job. The other storyteller is Regina Daly, who is originally a Jersey girl, now I don't even know how to say this word, Michigander, living in Ann Arbor since 1998, as well as Ontario, Canada, with her 11 cockatiels. That sounds like a loud house, a little bit. Regina has maintained an integrative dental practice since 1989 and is part-time faculty member at the University of Michigan School of Dentistry. She became the first female diplomat in dental sleep medicine in Michigan, treating patients with snoring and sleep apnea. And Regina and Kevin, who you'll learn more about in this story, are lovers of nature and the great outdoors, including the canyon. And Kevin and Regina traveled the world as unofficial Goodwill ambassadors and volunteered over the years in many different programs. She is grateful to be part of Grand Canyon Youth's fundraiser this year to share Kevin's and Sharon's story. Good luck.
everybody. My name's Sharon,
And I'm Gina, or Regina.
and we're here to tell the story together, what we're calling Staying Alive at 205, a curious and impactful journey. So, the story starts in 1991, and I was rowing a raft down the Grand Canyon, and I was in the western Grand Canyon, just entering 205 Rapid. And for those of you that know the river very well, 205 doesn't really usually even get called a name, but actually some serious things can happen and have happened over the years at 205 Rapid. And as I was entering the rapid and looking downstream at the lip, I saw a yellow raft just going around the corner to the second part of the current rapid and disappearing. And my first thought was, I wonder if they're going to be camped where we're camped tonight. And then as I went down a wave or two and looked way in the distance down at the bottom of the rapid, right in the current, if you don't know, the current has waves upstream this way, the current's going this way, and it hits this wall. And as I was quite a ways upstream still, I saw a little head of a person and an orange life jacket up against this, somewhere in this area, not in where the most ferocious current is, but right in here. And as I looked down, there was no rafts in sight. The last raft had gone around the corner, and I knew this person needed help and was not going to extricate themselves pinned against that wall. And I knew I had to do something.
That small-headed man with the orange life jacket was my husband, Kevin. I didn't know that he made plans to take this trip. It happened while I was away with friends down the Jersey Shore, and he picked me up from the airport with his arm in a sling and proceeded to tell me that he took this trip and his shoulder fell out, and I was livid, as only a Jersey girl could be. But then he proceeded to tell me about being rescued, and I got over myself and realized he almost died. And the two of us became curious about finding the woman who saved him. That journey lasted 27 years. Kevin only knew her name, Sharon Hester, and he knew she lived somewhere in Arizona, okay? So we thought, okay, let's start in Phoenix. And we were on a trip together in Phoenix and went to, actually it was a phone booth, looking up in the phone book, Sharon Hester's and all the outdoor shops in Phoenix, and we couldn't find her. And then in 2018, Kevin met a young man in the Ann Arbor People's Food Co-op. His name was Nick Cheney, and he was a guide in Alaska, and he knew of the famous Sharon Hester. So we happened to be in Sedona on a trip with friends from Ireland, and we thought, we're going to go up to Flagstaff and find Sharon Hester. So we went to multiple outdoor shops, and it was finally Peace Surplus, where a young person knew Sharon worked for ASRA, and we wanted to surprise her to thank her for saving his life.
So by that point, I worked in the office full-time at ASRA, and ASRA office got a phone call and asked if a Sharon Hester worked there. And we were told yes, and I took a call. And the woman at Peace Surplus said, are you Sharon Hester? And I said, yes. She said, well, there's some people here that are looking for you. And I said, well, who are they? They don't want to tell you. So
This is true.
And I said, well, can you tell me anything? No, it's a surprise. So I immediately thought, I've got stalkers. So I told my coworkers that I was going to go hide in my car and for them to call me when the coast was clear in case it was a stalker. And so I was quite suspicious.
And in the meantime, Kevin and I and our friends, Sean and Annie from Ireland, we're all excited. We're finally going to meet Sharon Hester and surprise her. And we ran to get a bouquet of flowers to present to her.
So I got the phone call out, the code's clear, you can come back to the office. And I walked in the front door, and there were these two strangers with flowers. I had no idea who they were. And they came running up excited, hugged me, and gave me the flowers, and I still wasn't sure who they were. And then Kevin and Gina proceeded to tell the story, his version of the story of the rescue, which I remembered, but hadn't really thought that much about it for 27 years. And his hunt and their hunt together, because they became curious about finding me. Part one.
And these are Kevin's words, his own words in a letter that he had written to Shay in November of 2018. We met October 12th, 2018, and a few weeks later he wrote this letter and he said, "Meeting you for the second time was much better because of the dryness. Always knew I would find you at some point in the fullness of time. Having recounted the trip to friends over and over, and that is true, hundreds of times, of how this beautiful woman emerged from the depths of the Colorado to save me, I knew that I had to find you someday."
So we became friends at that point, and in later communications, texting and letters and phone calls, pretty early on, I suggested that maybe it was a great story and we should tell this story together someday, Kevin and I. But COVID happened and life, and we never seemed to get around to it. But back to 205. So there we are at 205, and I realize I've got to pull into that eddy, which some of you might know, at higher water, and this wasn't exactly low water, 1991. I said figured I had to pull in there and get him and finish the wave part and work my way into the rapid, while he was, meanwhile, clinging to the wall with one arm, and his whole world was just about 6 inches of wall in front of him. He had probably got in that an inflatable kayak. He'd flown in at Whitmore Wash to join a trip. And he never been on a river. He jumped in an inflatable kayak. He'd probably been on the river no more than 2 hours when he flipped in this rapid and fell out, and in the course of that dislocated his arm. And the first thing he tells me he remembers is he was going to die. He was certain of it. And then as I came in behind him, he didn't know I was there. And all he heard was from above was a voice from above say, "My name's Sharon, and I'm here to help you. What's your name?"
Kevin was wickedly funny, so he imitated himself, clinging to the rock when he told this story and said, "My name is Kevin," totally petrified. And then this is his part of the story in his words. "I recall you pulling my arm toward you with increasing pressure after he got into her raft, as a New Zealand guy pulled me the other way. You looked me right in the eye and said, 'This may hurt, so no problem if you yell out.' Of course, the whole time, I'm seriously thinking, who is this woman? Not sure how long the yanking lasted, but it worked perfectly. Several doctors have been unable to get his shoulder back in the socket without filling him with Valium." He wrote, "The expertise with which you handled this medical emergency was amazing. It was calm, kind, medically professional. I seem to be the only one with a modicum of freak out."
So, and my side of the story is, it took some time to get Kevin in the boat. He was a big man. He was probably at least 240 pounds, had been a professional basketball player, and it took a couple of us to get him on the boat. And very muscular. It was a lot of effort to get his arm back in, actually. And we got his arm in. I think another Azure boat pulled in, and I said, "Why don't you go ahead and go down to camp, and we'll catch up to you later. This might take a little bit of time, and you guys can just set up camp." And then his arm was back in, and I managed to row out of the eddy, which some of you know at higher water can be a little tricky, and caught up to the raft. There was one raft waiting around the corner for him, kind of wildly worried, had no idea what was going on. And I said, "I'll just row him down to his camp downstream and drop him off," which I did. and waved goodbye, and I thought, I'll never see this person again. But I was really happy because as a raft guide, usually when you save someone's life, you were the reason you put them there in the first place. So that was a unique situation. So I was kind of excited about that end of it. And over the years, my niece Claire, running the slideshow, has invited me to tell these tales, and I've always declined. And then this August, she asked me, and I said, before it's too late, I should ask Kevin to tell this story with me, because he said he would. And so I texted Kevin, and I suggested that we tell this story.
In October of 2021, Kevin passed away. And I had tried to get in touch with Shay for the 2 years, and I just couldn't bring myself to leave a message or text. I was trying to connect personally. And a curious bit of serendipity occurred on August 31st, 2023. It would have been our 37th wedding anniversary. And I took a walk in nature at the Mathai Trails, something we love to do together, and I asked him for a sign, that he was okay, just ask for a sign. And literally, on the way home, Siri announced, "You have a text from Sharon Hester." And my heart is beating out of my chest. And I'm like, okay, read the text, Siri. "Hi, Kevin and Regina. This is Sharon Hester. I've been asked by the Grand Canyon Youth to tell our story at the fundraiser. Would you be interested? Would you like to tell the story?" So I went home and composed myself and called Sharon and shared that Kevin had passed. And I thought, to honor Sharon and in Kevin's memory, I knew enough about his story to tell his story. And that's why I'm here. I will. And it's curious, isn't it, that we may not realize the impact we have on people that we meet along the way. But Sharon, by rescuing Kevin at the 205, had a major impact on our lives. She allowed us to have 30 more years of an amazing life together. And for that, I'm forever grateful, and I'm sure that he is, and he would love to have been here to tell the story.
Thank you for letting us tell it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Oh, gosh. Oh, you took my notes. I need my notes. You're good, these ones. Oh, good, that gives me a minute. No, you're good, Okay. Thank you so much. And I actually feel like the timing was right for the story. So I'm so grateful that you chose to share it with us tonight. Thank you. Okay.
I would have preferred not being the one to follow.
I know, I'm sorry, Allie. Whew. Our next storyteller, who, very graciously is going after, is Allie Stender. And Allie is grateful to live a very good life with her sweet family here in Flagstaff. Her professional career focused on making connections across systems to improve health and wellness for individuals and families. These days, she's a professor in Health Sciences Department at Northern Arizona University. Her involvement in GCY began nearly 2 decades ago. I've known Allie pretty much since the beginning of my time, when she coordinated her first GCY River trip, subsequently embedded GCY trips into an after-school program for youth living in Williams, Arizona. She coordinated numerous GCY trips and served on the board of directors, and still will occasionally drive a van full of middle schoolers to the San Juan if it works with her schedule. Welcome, Allie.
This is a double hydration situation. This is a really tough act to follow. Does it just fit in there? It does. Muscle it. Okay. Thanks for the minute there. It's just those tears. 30 more years. Oh, man. When I think of river stories, I think of stories that start with some image of a kayaker with a kayaker over their back and a paddle in hand, standing over some frothy view of a waterfall and dramatic music playing in the background, and a voice saying something like, "When you're standing on top of a rapid, you know that despite everything you've done to prepare for this moment, it could go very wrong." I don't have river stories like that. You guys, I don't even have a kayak. But somehow, even though my river resume pales in comparison to the many legends and emerging legends in this audience that I gratefully can't see because I'm blinded by the light, I'm here today no less impacted by my experiences on the river. I'm aware of how it's shaped me indelibly over the last 20 years. You all, some of you close friends, some of you role models from afar, along with Grand Canyon Youth and others in my life, have created, I didn't expect those feelings to come up, have created very significant space for me to experience not only the Grand Canyon and river rafting, but this community. And for that, I am grateful. So when Emma called, not on August 31st, and asked me if I would be willing to share a story about curiosity, of course, I said yes. And let me be clear, I am totally confident that okay, it's still there. I'm confident that this is not some epic entertainment of whitewater legend of legendary proportions. More like a really dorky reflection of a professor who's also a mom, who also loves rafting and really loves this community of people. So, for those of you who don't know, I think Emma just mentioned it actually because I wrote that bio. I am a career public health practitioner. My focus is really finding ways for populations to achieve their optimal well-being, and I really am excited about looking at how any given environment encourages or discourages the achieving of really high quality of life. Just nerding out for a second here. So, as an academic, dare I call myself one, I really rely on this notion of, or the reality actually, of evidence-based practice when trying to affect community change, right? And so my career is really focused on designing health interventions based on evidence-based practice. And, I've gotten pretty good at it over the last 20 years. With my colleagues, we've brought in millions of dollars to run programs in Northern Arizona, some of which were partnered with GCY, a lot not. But $110,000 raised is really cool. When I was on the board of GCY, I swear our budget was like $60,000. So it's pretty awesome. But what I do know, probably more than I know that, is that life is a lot more than my job. And the lessons learned from this river community and my backcountry adventures at various points in my life have really kind of fueled this conflict, or put me in conflict, with what I know to be true at work. And so despite my commitment to evidence-based practice, I just know that there's more, and I know that there's something different. And I kind of really frequently feel like it's the opposite of evidence-based practice a lot of the time. And so I've really come to terms with this fact that I live a lie. My work life is a lie, and my real life knows that. But I still go and teach it, because, teaching is an art.
The river, the Grand Canyon youths themselves, a lot of you dirtbags up there, and a lot of other friends have really helped teach me that curiosity is what fuels growth. A lot of the time, we just need to, 1, follow our hunch, 2, give it a shot, and 3, be open to see what we can learn from whatever the scenario holds. And that is curiosity. It sparks action and it manifests change. So basically, everything I know about evidence-based practice is turned on its head by my experience with the river in our river community. In all its glory, the active pursuit of curiosity is practice-based evidence. And I swear to God, I had no idea. I don't even know who this Kevin person is. I don't know anything about GCY Speaks. I haven't been in the loop very long. But Kevin's analysis that's up on the wall is exactly what I'm talking about. Practice-based evidence. We've been collecting the stories and the information that the youth have been telling us for all these years to tell us what we already know, but we don't know how to articulate. And so, thank you, Kevin. Who's Kevin? Where are you? You're fantastic. Thanks for stealing my story. But you're not the only one who stole my story today. So I was getting to the point where I was going to start telling the story about the Williams girls, you know, the girls who grow up in the community of Williams, who calls itself the gateway to Grand Canyon, but those girls who had grown up there had never actually ever seen the Grand Canyon, so we decided to take them rafting in it. This was in 2004 was our first trip. We did it for 5 or 6 years after. But I'm not gonna tell you those stories of those girls who are women now. They're great friends to each other. They're making huge differences in the communities where they live. One of them coaches me regularly on instructional design at NAU. They're businesswomen, they're mothers, and they're just all around good people. To me, they are the testament of practice-based evidence and the practice-based evidence that are the catalytic possibilities that GCY manifests for young people who go through their experiences. But I didn't really get to sit down with those memories to tell you the good stories about mascara application on rainy days in an inner gorge or underwear left on the beach every morning. Because at 1:30 this afternoon when I was finalizing my story, I was interrupted by a screaming 9-year-old who came crashing into my house, yelling, "She did it! She did it! Come and see!" And dishing out high fives, Lucy, our neighbor, grabbed my daughter Maeve's hand, and they raced out the front door together. Obviously, I followed. And there was Lucy, or Lucy's little sister Macy, who was 5 years old, in the cul-de-sac. And the girls had been playing outside all day, soaking up the vitamin D, eating the last apples on the trees, getting the best kind of Flagstaff fall, crumpled leaf, dusty, kind of dirty that you can only do in Flagstaff this time of year. No parents were paying attention. We were all doing yard work and maybe writing stories at the last minute. But the big girls, I guess earlier in the morning, had decided that they were going to help the littlest one. They were curious to know if they could be the ones who taught her how to finally ride a bike for the first time. And so, fueled by a significant stash of Halloween candy from Tuesday, Lucy and Maeve stuck with Macy all morning until she pedaled on her own for the first time today. And when that happened, man, was that celebration unbridled pride and joy, right? And I was really interrupted and feeling bothered because I was not getting my story out. And then I realized, well, duh, there's the story. There were no adults following the recommendation. I don't know if you know this, but if you research how to teach a kid how to ride a bike, which I've done, you're supposed to hold them under the armpits. You're not supposed to hold the seat like my dad did. You hold them on the armpits and you let them go. And that way they do the hip balance on their own on the bike. Nobody did that for Macy today. There wasn't all this positive parenting every time she stumbled, was saying the right words to build up her esteem. It was just a couple of kids who had an idea, they gave it a try, and they kept trying until it worked. That's practice-based evidence. So curiosity leads to the doing that results to the sustained change. If I had time, I would have put up a video right now of Macy riding her bike, because she's probably still riding her bike in circles in the cul-de-sac as we're here right now. She's very, very proud. Our river community has been doing this for each other on the regular. With every invitation to float or paddle or ride or hike, we're doing the doing together. And these are the doings that help us navigate tough times and deep losses, as some of us are feeling today, to celebrate the momentary and the momentous milestones. And so with that, I raise my glass in a toast to all of you, all of us, to realizing more practice-based evidence together, to getting out there with our friends, to trying new things repeatedly until it works, and here's to being forever changed by the experience together. Cheers.
You did amazing. Remember at the beginning when I said we're going to have a theme, and then everyone's going to take that theme and go in a different direction with it? How amazing. So amazing. We have one more story this evening. Whew, that was good. I want to, and I'm not going to say your name right, Sophia. Maragos. Yes! Come on up here. So it seemed fitting on a night of storytelling about youth on the river that we would invite an alumna to come and share her story. And Sophia came from Grand Canyon today. And yes, she also wrote her own bio. She's our next storyteller, and born and raised at Grand Canyon National Park. She's a senior at Grand Canyon High School and will graduate in May. She's a proud GCY alumna and plans to be a river guide at some point in the future. So to close, and I promise we have more than Guide Farm, but it's pretty cool. So thanks so much for coming and sharing your story. Good luck, have fun.
All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Sophia. As it was said, I am a senior at Grand Canyon High School. I was born and raised in the Grand Canyon National Park, and I am a proud alumna of GCY. I know how lucky and privileged I am to live in the national park. I've been told my entire life, and I've seen it, and I've grown up with it, and it's watched me grow as I've watched it. Don't get me wrong, as much as I love it, the tourism buzz and the elk jams, they get tiring after a little while. Some of you may know. Growing up in the canyon makes you, growing up with it makes you seem like, it's just the canyon, it's another thing that you see every day, but people don't see that every day, and I saw the river every day when I was a kid. And being able to experience that in a different capacity, in a different way, and seeing it from up top to comparing it to being in the bottom and seeing it and being in it and really just feeling the water flow through you as you raft the canyon was a truly different experience from watching it from up top. So my story tonight is about the trip that changed my life and truly sent my life on a completely different trail than I thought it would ever go. Now, if you guys all can close your eyes for me and picture your favorite place in the world, wherever that may be, what can you hear and smell and touch That's what the river is to me. The river is a life force, is a being that you can feel flow through you, and you can hear it, and you can sense it, and you can feel its movements everywhere you go. You can feel the water rush across the boats as you're floating through or as you're running through huge rapids. You can feel the energy that you constantly feel on the river. The river is something that I've been blessed to do so many times in my life. I've been with GCY for almost half my life now. I started my first trip when I was in 6th grade, and I am doing my last trip, hopefully not the last, but I'm doing one of my last trips with GCY in May this year, this upcoming year. I keep coming back because something that I've experienced and done time after time keeps me intrigued and keeps me coming back, because the Grand Canyon is so grand and always leaves me asking more questions, but always answers them as I continue on down the stream. I'm a senior. I've done about 6 trips, and like I've said, I'm so lucky to be doing all of these trips. I've been, with the experiences that GCY has given me, I truly would not be the person that I am today. And they have set me on a different course in my life, and I'm so grateful for that. I'm going to go back a couple years to the trip that changed my life. My guides were Omar, Taylor, Morgan, and Garrison, some of which are not here tonight, but I do see a couple of familiar faces in the crowd, which is super cool. Meeting them for the first time was different. We were coming out of COVID. We were just kind of getting reacclimated to everything, and it was just like a really big experience all at one time. We were putting in at Diamond Creek, and as we were, unloading off the buses and getting down to the river, Omar introduced himself, and we were going around, and he said, "Wait a minute, guys, hold on. It's way too hot out here. We need to get in the river." We all were super reluctant because the river was freezing at that point, but we all begrudgingly got into the water and splashed and played around for a while. As we were doing that, we kind of got into a circle and introduced ourselves and had, some cool conversations, talking about if we were dragons, what would we collect in our caves? And as we were going through and talking about all these things, bringing that kid spirit back and bringing, that kind of fun and goofiness is what GCY is about, as many of you guys have heard tonight with our wonderful stories. But as we were talking about this, it was just kind of like that pre-trip, like feeling the water and feeling everything for the first time. It was truly different than any other time. As we're, finishing up our, talks and everybody's getting to know each other, we pick our boats and we set down the river. I chose Taylor's boat, and we were talking about our names and, what we wanted to do after high school. And I had told her, not knowing that 4 days later I would know what I wanted to do, but I had told her that I had no idea what I wanted to do after high school. After, talking with the 6 other people on our paddle boat, we kind of came to a lull, and she said, "Guys, again, it's really hot out here. I think we need to have a water fight." So we, all forward, as many of you guys know, got all the way up to the front of the pack, and we started a huge water fight. Everybody was soaking wet, everybody was screaming, everybody was having a great time. We finally get to one of our hikes, Travertine Falls hike, which is one of my favorite hikes. Forgive me if I'm saying that name wrong. It's a beautiful waterfall hike with ladders and different ways that you can get around and play in the water. And that truly was one of the first times that I had been back to a place that I was so familiar with and felt like it was home. It was different than all the other times. We played in the water, and we are hiking back down to the boats, and we're getting back on the boats to get to our camp, which was, forgive me for the name, but Travertine Falls Camp, with like the little trickling waterfall right there. And I remember unloading all of our blueberries, and if you don't know what that is, that's like the dry bags that GCY has. They're big and blue, and we call them blueberries. with all of your stuff in it. And we were unloading all of those bags and getting the kitchen set up and getting our camps picked out. And every year that I've been on a GCY trip in the canyon, I've always stayed at the same spot in this campground. And I remember walking up with my blueberry that was way heavier than it needed to be, walking up to this campsite and like seeing it for the first time. And this was like my house. This was my home. This was the first time that I'd felt like I was where I belonged and where I needed to be. And I remember setting up everything and getting ready and talking with my friends and my sister, and we're sitting there and we're talking and journaling. And then, you know, we meet up with everybody else in the group in kind of more the main area of the camp. And my mentor, who was with us on this trip, he tells us, as we're, you know, having different conversations, but he says, we are in the extraordinary world. And we have left the ordinary world, but when we return to the ordinary world, don't forget the extraordinary world. And that has stuck with me for years, because Grand Canyon is like a place like no other. Many of you can attest to that. And that, you know, extraordinary and ordinary worlds, well, yes, they may be different, but, you know, being able to see the extraordinary world and the ordinary world is truly a blessing. After talking around the fire, we hear the loudest dinner call I have ever heard on the river. And we all of us rush to the hand washing station and wash our hands as fast as we can to get Morgan's delicious river pozole. It was her grandmother's recipe, and I remember that because I remember, ambiguous details that, but I remember sitting down and eating this and thinking, oh my God, I've hit the jackpot. This is it. That river pozole was the best that I've ever had, and it's stuck with me ever since. We were sitting and talking about, just watching the sunset over the canyon walls and watching, the birds fly and the river rushing by as we, can hear the rapids as big water day is coming tomorrow. And we're all sitting and we're, telling stories and just kind of getting to know each other a little bit more. And we all end up going to bed, waking up the next morning, and just kind of like expecting like a big, big day. And I remember getting up before anybody else in my group was. We were a pretty small trip that year. It was about 15 kids, or 15, like everybody total. I remember getting up and being the first one awake and walking down to the boats to see if anybody was awake. And of course, all of the guides were. They were getting breakfast ready and getting coffee and tea set up and orange juice. And I remember sitting down with them and them offering me a cup of coffee and talking about life and talking about the different symphonies of the canyon and what it meant to be a river guide and all of the different things that were just so new to me, but I wanted to be a part of. And they they welcomed me with open arms. I remember as everybody was waking up and we were all eating breakfast, Omar had shouted from the boats, "The destroyer is coming," is what he called the sun. And we would all coin that name for the sun, and we would hide and shroud from it as much as we could on that trip because it was so hot. But I remember those words ringing in my ear the rest of the trip because, by gosh, it was hot. We were kind of on our big whitewater day, and as we were going down the river, we were coming up on Killer Fangs Falls, as many of you know, which is a super fun rapid to run. I was sitting in a boat with my sister and one of my best friends, and we were just kind of talking to Garrison, one of our guides. He was explaining to us like all the different things that he would do as he was, rafting through and like how he would maneuver the boat. And I remember sitting there and like being like, this clicks. Math class doesn't click. This clicks. And I remember, kind of internalizing and understanding everything that he was saying to me. And I remember you can see it, you can hear it, it's coming up, and I turn around, and I don't even care about the rapid. I'm just watching him go through the rapid and watching how he turns the boat at the top of the waves, or he, does different things to maneuver the boats. And I remember coming out of that rapid being so like exhilarated and so much adrenaline pumping, and he's super happy. And I remember Omar kind of at the end on the snout and yelling, "You slicked it!" And I remember kind of looking around and nobody really knew what that meant. And then they explained it to us. You know, he did really well on his path of the rapid. And we were all like, right, okay. And as, you know, as we felt more into the canyon, we used the lingo a little more. Later on, as soon as we got out of that rapid, Omar is like really, really excited, and he's kind of laughing, and Omar's laughing, and we kind of turn around, and we're like, what's going on? He's like, well, a week ago, I just made a couple old people swim that rapid because I flipped my boat. He's like, I didn't want to tell you that, but I'm telling you now. He's like, so thank you for coming on my boat. And we all sat there, and we were like, awesome, yeah. It was super fun, and I remember that feeling of like being with somebody who had just accomplished something so big. That was something that I wanted to be a part of. That family, that like unit of people that had come together and been one, you know, was something that I look for every single day since then. As kind of closing up, I really want to thank GCY for being an amazing company. Like they've said earlier today, they've helped 12,000 youth and counting, and I'm honored to be one of those youths. I'm honored that I've been able to be given the opportunity to come back so many different times, because I truly would not be the person that I am today. So thank you so much to GCY as a corporation for truly changing my life.
You're a good speaker. You'll make a good lawyer. Okay. Wow. You slicked it. Woo! All right, that brings us a little bit to the end, but before we go, we need to do some thank yous, because gratitude is really important. As you are grateful after a slicked run or an amazing community event, and all these incredible speakers and storytellers tonight. So let's give a final shout out to our sponsors. Tonight's event would not have been possible without the amazing support of these Flagstaff businesses. Thank you, sponsors: Arizona Raft Adventure, Flagstaff Surgical Associates, National Bank of Arizona, Narba Institute, Wildland Trekking Company, Fratelli Pizza. Thanks for the pizza, Brent. Four Season Guides, RNA Import Auto, and Vishnu River Supply. Whew. While we are in a space of gratitude, we want to say thank you to Margarita Cruz, trip coordinator and last year storyteller, who's been filming tonight. Thank you. And Urian Lee on sound. Also a GCY alumni, I learned last week at our sound check, so they are everywhere. But thank you, Urian. And Molly Baker, the alumna who made the video. And we'd love to thank all of the generous online auction donors. Wow, just great community event. And we'd like to call up all of our storytellers one more time who are here tonight, and give them a big round of applause. Truly one of our best group of stories that we've had. Thank you. And we have a gift for them. Into the light, into the light. Canyon Coolers donated some great coolers for them, and so at the end of the event, don't leave without your cooler, please. So thank you so much. Just checking my notes so I don't forget anything. I don't even know how many. No, stay up here. You guys are important. Okay, real number from 12 minutes ago. We have raised $38,872. That is amazing. Thank you all so much. If you are interested in sharing a story, you have a year to think about it. And tough acts to follow, for sure, but so wonderful to be able to hear the stories of our community. Want to give a huge thank you to all the incredible GCY staff. Chantal, Omar, Claire, Cassandra, Mary Ellen, Kelly in the back. I mean, we just have incredible folks. Incredible Grand Canyon Youth Board members, past and present, as well as the field staff who were slinging pizza for fun and help setting up and take down. Great job. Nicole Sanchez, Caroline Jordan. Who else did I forget? Santo. How could I forget Santo? And our amazing work studies, Dylan Krell, who's a guide, field staff for us, and Haley Nelson. Amazing humans. As a final, yeah, one more round of applause for those folks, definitely. And as a final reminder, the online auction will be closing tomorrow at noon. So you still have time. You can get us up to 40,000. Why not? Let's do it. And if you are the winner of an item, you will get a text message, and then we will have time next week that you can come and pick up those items. Finally, a huge thank you to each and all of you for coming. There's a lot going on in Flagstaff tonight. Yeah, a lot going on tonight. And so I'm just honored and privileged that you chose to come here and spend the night hearing these stories and celebrating this incredible community. We hope that you have an incredible evening. We do have to be out of here by 9. And so if you would like to linger, do so in the cold darkness. I, again, just thank you so very much, and we will see you next year. Yeah.
So as you're leaving, some of the other things that are going on tonight, there's a memorial for Nelbert Nemi, and I don't know if any of you knew him, but I would just like to say a cheers to Nelbert, because he was a big part of this community, so thank you.
He ran the snout boat on the first Diamond Down trips that we ever did in Elston, with a really weird frame, and yeah, anyway.
And let's give a round of applause for Emma.
Oh.
She's run this organization pretty amazingly for the last 20 years.
Thank you. All right, have a great night, everybody. Thank
Has
you.
anybody lost a dime?
This is my daughter. She will take over someday.
Yep, I know.